UConn fans, this is Chris Brodeur. I'm an online producer at the Hartford Courant, and you're listening to another episode of the UConn Insider Podcast. We're talking women's basketball today, so I've got with me in studio columnist Jeff Jacobs. Jeff, welcome.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and we've got a treat here for UConn fans. We've actually got beat reporter Paul Doyle is calling in from Los Angeles, right, Paul?
Yes, where it's 75 and sunny this morning.
Thank you for that.
Mid-80s today, so just thought I'd share that with you.
Yeah, and I'll give you the update from on the ground here. It's like 45 and rainy, so thanks a lot for giving us the West Coast forecast. But Paul was nice enough to come on with us. He's it's a little early out where he is. It's 9 a.m. We're less than a day removed from the UConn women prevailing over UCLA last night at Pauley Pavilion. This was the number 5 ranked team in the country, and UConn kind of made short work of them without star Katie Lou Samuelson, who's obviously a little bit dinged up. Paul, if you want to start by giving us just the atmosphere of this game. I know it was kind of, had a special feel, being that this is John Wooden's territory, and Gino obviously admires his work. And the Bruins came in as, again, 5th-ranked team in the country. I think a lot of women's basketball fans had high hopes for this one being a better game than it ended up being.
Yeah, UCLA, Monday, they, in the latest poll, they're number 5, the first time they're in the top 5 since 1999. So this is a kind of a program on the rise. They're talented. I think there was a thought that UConn, coming off 2 games in 3 days and then flying 3,000 miles out here, that they might be catching them at a good time. So, over 9,000 people in that building. It's a great facility. Obviously, the history, Kobe Bryant sitting courtside. It's sort of this electric atmosphere. And, for a good portion of the first half, it was a pretty good game. And then, UConn just kind of put its foot on the pedal. In the third quarter, they really pulled away. And, I think answered a lot of questions. Gino said after the game that given the team they were playing and the atmosphere and everything at stake, he thought his team sort of found its identity last night. It was and he's not one to say that. He usually hedges his bets, and he'll pick at things, and he certainly had some things to pick at last night. But overall, he was really happy with their performance, and I think just really encouraged. So it was a fun night. It really was.
Jake, what did you think of the performance? I mean, this was kind of a breakout game for Napheesa Collier. She dropped a game-high 23 points, and I think Gino had been kind of looking for her to show something. Obviously, she was great last year, and she had she produced the first few games, but this was really her first big, breakout.
Yeah, I'm watching the game on television. I heard Paul. I mean, everything was skewing UCLA's way, and he traveled across country. Granted, it was east to west, so it's not as bad as west to east, but still, 3 games, 5 days. UCLA on the rise, their place, everything suggested that it was going to be really close, in my mind anyway. Mm-hmm. A couple things barked out at me was that UCLA is really quick.
Yeah. And
we've talked about this, but UConn's really quick and they're really big.
Yeah.
And so I'm not shocked. Giving Collier was kind of like dawdling along the first few games, and so I'm not surprised that she used her size and her play to get inside and make statements. Mm-hmm. So they UCLA they have a big kid that can play, and she got points, but overall though UConn was just. They're tough down low. I mean, so much of our talk, and rightfully so, through the early part of the season has been about defense and defensive transition, hands. Yeah. Gabby Williams, Crystal Dangerfield, disruptive. Now all of a sudden we've seen another element of UConn's game. We knew that was there, mm-hmm. And when we talked about chemistry and how it was going to go, there you go. Yeah. There you go. We saw last night another. Besides showing their glue traveling around across country and playing a good game, they showed another dimension of their game that we knew that was there, but it had to come out.
Sure.
Yeah, you remember Collier last year. You'd look up and suddenly she'd have 20 points, right? And she just sort of did it in the flow of the game, and she's so efficient. Haven't really seen that as much in the first 3 games, but last night she was the Collier of last year. They were finding her down in the paint, and it was just that bank shot, one after another. Gino said after the game that he's been sort of riding her about her defense, which has improved, but he's also been stressing, kicking the ball out, and let's make sure we make the extra pass. And she's the kind of kid who she wants to please her coach, so she's almost doing that too much. So yesterday, I guess, at the shoot-around, he said, I don't want you to kick it out. When we find you, sort of do what you did last year. And again, she did it. She was she was the All-American. And it's funny. It's only 3 games in, you almost forgot how good she is after 3 games. But she was great. They needed her without Katie Lou Samuelson. So they have so many difference makers in that roster.
Her nose for the basket is really uncanny. Mm-hmm. When she gets position, you know how many shots go in? All of them. She shoots 100% when she gets it right. Yeah. I mean, they all go in. So it was one of those nights where she just shows you, unless you have a really extraordinary shot blocker or somebody really big that can body her and create some havoc for her, when she gets in certain places on that court, she's devastating. Like Paul said, you almost forgot about that aspect of it. That was kind of what I was crying about a little bit, though, Paul, in the first couple of games. Remember that that the way they were playing was not feeding to her game. But then you watch last night's game, and there it was. Yeah.
It's it was always there, though. And that's the thing. They lose Samuelson, and they have a short bench, and you wonder where they're going to get the points from. And you forget that they have an All-American. It was maybe the best scorer in the country, most efficient scorer in the country last year. So, this is why they're a notch above everyone else.
Sure. Yeah, and Paul, you mentioned Katie Lou, and I know that, in the lead up to the game, you wrote a piece just about how, this was supposed to be this homecoming for her. So many, growing up in that area, she was going to have so many, family members and friends coming to watch this game, and it really was unfortunate for her that she didn't get to play. Did KML go too? Did she end up being in the building?
She was there. I saw her post game. She's helping out with her old high school team and sort of taking the winter off to get herself in shape and rest her body. So she was there. There were, I guess there were about 30 kids from her high school program, her high school coach, her sister Bonnie and her parents, and there was a lot of friends there who made the drive up through the notorious Southern California traffic to get here. It was definitely disappointing for her, but she I think that as her high school coach told me, she does take the long view that she's got to get healthy, and they're going to need her in March more than they need her now in a way. So I'm hearing that I think the injury, it's just a question of rest, and they're not worried about being anything serious. So it is disappointing for her, and I wonder if next year, I think they're coming out to play Cal next year at Berkeley, and I wonder if they'll try to sneak in a game at Long Beach State or somewhere around here, somewhere in Southern California, so she can get another opportunity to play at home, because they've always been good at that. So
sure, and obviously, when you mentioned, the quotes from Gino were kind of, he was kind of making it sound like it could be 2 weeks, could be 3, could be 3-4 games, that kind of nebulous, but. I mean, if there's ever a team that could absorb a loss like this, and obviously there's no rush. I mean, she should just whatever it takes to get right. I mean, things will probably be fine in her absence, and more so than other teams, they can take a loss like that. Another player that stepped up was Megan Walker. Remember the old Yankee, like they used to say about the Yankees, somebody became a Yankee tonight? that was
Yankee.
Yeah, that was like Megan Walker became a true Husky, or at least sort of flashed the talent that we we heard so much about after they got her to commit.
Right.
She kind of they moved her along slowly the first few games. I don't think she got into the Stanford game until maybe like the third quarter. But she showed you last night what she's capable of. What was she, 5 of 5 and perfect from 3 too?
Yeah, she made her first 5 shots. She hit three threes on 3 possessions in a row. So she just came down. They were looking for her, and I'll say this: after that, UCLA started to sort of pay attention to her, and they had someone on her. But yeah, she wasn't awed by the stage. She seemed to really be comfortable out there. Now remember, early last season, Crystal Dangerfield, a freshman, had a big game against Baylor, who was, I guess, ranked 2nd in the country at the time, and we had her, anointed, and and then she ended up struggling. Now I don't know if what kind of year Walker is going to have, and I think as we go along, once Katie Lou comes back, once Batuli Kamara, is back and healthy, Walker could end up being the 8th player, right, on the roster in the rotation. So there's less of a need to have her become like, a marquee player as a freshman. A little less pressure on her. But I think last night, it just showed you offensively how good she is. Now, she's still struggling defensively, and that's always going to happen for freshmen in the UConn system. But offensively, she can shoot, and she's a weapon, and she's a kid who, she's got a little bit of a swagger, and she doesn't wilt under the bright lights as we saw. So, yeah, that was a big game for her, and I think she earned a lot of trust, and we'll see where it goes from here.
I got to sing Paul Doyle's praises here, because when we were sitting together the game before the West Coast trip against Maryland, Paul urged me to. It was an afternoon game, so I had some time. He urged me to watch Megan Walker and tell me what I thought. I was impressed by how confident and assertive she was, and you saw some really good things. And then afterwards, we kind of plan about how we're going to write in like notebook column, and go. And Paul was looking like thinking of Megan Walker for the notebook. So he asked Gino about Megan Walker in the post game, and Gino decided instead to take the negative tact, okay, and made it sound like that didn't that lead to the freshman being the worst? A question about Megan Walker, which we thought was being assertive, and we really knew she was being assertive, and we were right. Turned to Gino, kind of outfox us, or trying to outfox us by saying his freshmen were the worst defenders he'd ever seen in his life. And it was interesting there on that, because. So Paul Doyle and Jeff Jacobs were not stunned by what happened at UCLA. Maybe the head coach was, but we were not. Right. It was just funny though that he decided to play down the Megan Walker card after Maryland.
Right.
Well, he obviously knows what he's doing.
I think I asked her. I said the way I phrased it was, she doesn't seem tentative, and he said, "I don't know what you're talking about. She doesn't seem tentative." That was his response. And which surprised me, because that's one thing I thought that she might be struggling defensively with the UConn system. But to me, just the eye test, like I could see an effort there. Like she seems to be working hard. And but he said that he didn't see it that way, and he said that she's been struggling in practice. And it's funny, even after the game here, it had that NCAA tournament feel. They brought the coach and the players up to a podium. Now, usually after a game, you might have the coach on a podium, but for in these road games, you talk to the players outside of the locker room. So they had the players up on the podium, and Gino was sitting next to Megan, and he's pointing at the stat sheet after the game. And what he was telling her was, he said, it was great. You had, whatever it was, 13 points. He said, but you had three rebounds and 3 fouls. And he's like, that's not good. So he was like coaching her after her coming out game, and was kind of critiquing her. And that's going to continue to happen. We'll all write good things about Megan now, and he'll come back next week and say, "Oh, you guys have, you got her in the Hall of Fame now," and he'll temper expectations. That's just the way he does it. So, that's Gino's world, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's the master at that, and it's kind of funny. Yeah. We've talked before on past shows about how, you get such honest quotes from these girls, and it's kind of like, you can hear their coach come out of, the quotes that they say. You can kind of hear Gino's voice in those quotes. Like he must be on them for this because they keep bringing it up. And it'll be interesting to watch or listen rather to Megan when you guys talk to her if some of this stuff that Gino's saying start to filter out from her. If that's how
I'll tell you, after watching that game last night, one game, freshman, I'm not going to jump to extraordinary conclusions, but I will jump to this one. She can play in the big games. No doubt in my mind.
Absolutely.
All right, no doubt in my mind. People come in, you hear this, that. She's going to play in big games this season, in my mind. And she's going to be.
I think so, too.
And,
I agree. I think, as I said, she seems to almost embrace it, and I think there was a really electric atmosphere, and she came in, and look, they needed her. She was the first player off the bench. She only went 6 deep last night, and once it's funny, foul trouble was going to be an issue, and they got through the first quarter with, I think there was 1 foul on Gabby, and I thought, okay, they're in good shape. Well, immediately Gabby picks up her second foul early in the second quarter, and Megan's in, and then in the third quarter, Stevens was in foul trouble, so he needed her last night, and there were games last year where he needed Crystal Dangerfield, and she struggled. They almost lost to Tulane because she was struggling when Kia Nurse was hurt. So I think it was encouraging. I agree with you, Jeff. I think in the spring we're going to be looking at her as potentially a real big option for them offensively coming off the bench.
I really thought after, like I wrote Sunday, I really thought coming off the Maryland game that Azrae Stevens was going to be like a pivotal part of this with the size and coming on in this UCLA game. And Megan kind of like maybe the notebook should have been the column, but I really thought that she was going to steal the show last night, and she did not.
Right. Well, she was facing this kid Billings, who's 6'4" and long, and a senior, a really experienced player at UCLA. Probably be a really high draft pick in the WNBA. She was matched up against a good player, and she had she have a couple blocks. I think she was, Stevens was definitely a presence in the paint, but she never really found herself offensively, and but in a way, the way Collier was playing, you didn't need her. And Gino has talked about, fitting all these pieces together. And in some ways, when Stevens is on and she's kind of occupying space in the paint, that could hurt Collier's game. So that's been a challenge for him, is to sort of fit all these pieces together. And, so it was kind of interesting last night to see that Stevens never really got on track.
Billings is almost a violent player at times. I was watching her on the offensive boards. She's very assertive, and it was a handful for in that respect. But they just didn't have the numbers of that. One thing that struck me, Paul, was that Canada's shot. If it had gone in better, if she shot better last night, it could have been a different game. And I don't know what the final numbers were, but if because she can run with anybody that UConn's got, and I just know she missed so many shots early on that it became a volume thing in terms of points.
Yeah, she was forcing shots, and she was at times a little out of control. There were times where when she had some open floor, and you just see her take off, and that's where she's kind of scary. But for the most part, they did a good job of just kind of having a hand on her, being around her, and that's where Dangerfield is, her quickness, and, Gabby could come out, and, UConn's just so athletic and quick, and there's really nothing this season when you have someone like Stevens with her long arms as like a post presence and a rim protector. There's really nothing that UConn lacks, right? They have speed. Whatever game you want to play, they can kind of match it. So, and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if anyone out there can come up with something.
Yeah. I'm not sure I've seen a UConn team so disruptive, so quickly on defense early in the opponent's offensive possessions. They create just havoc so quick, and even some great UConn teams didn't used to be as quick as, say, I don't know, you could, let's take a game. I can recall good UConn teams, really good UConn teams, going down to Rutgers, and Rutgers would have really disruptive players, and you might catch them. They weren't shooting well, Rutgers, but they were disruptive. Now this UConn team not only is devastating on offense, they're devastating in like that. It was funny I brought Rutgers up. Remember at the beginning of the season that they could play a little bit more like that, especially on the defensive end and a little swagger. They got that on that end. They create absolute and immediate problems for the other team's offense.
Yeah, they do, and that's just. Not only are they athletic and they're good defensive players physically, that's I feel like Gabby Williams sort of sets the tone there, and that's just her effort, her approach. Every possession you watch her, she's so engaged, and and that seems to it's kind of sort of contagious, because I think Dangerfield this year, she didn't have that last year. She's been like that. She's been playing like that this year, and I think that's the being around players like Gabby and Kia Nurse, it rubs off on these kids. So
as we watch the game so far, and the pieces we talk about chemistry and players stepping up and so forth. To me, the one indispensable player is Gabby Williams. I can see some players can hit shots if Katie Lou's out. Or, somebody can do this or somebody can do that. But that Gabby Williams, to me, is probably the one irreplaceable player if they're going to play at this extraordinarily high level.
Yeah, she has her fingers in every facet of the game, right? She just defensively, offensively, the way, she'll start things in transition. She's a... sort of a risky passer, but a good passer. She has a vision of, she was a point guard in high school, and she still has that mindset. So her outlet passing, and I just think that there's talk about like setting a tone, which, it's one of these these kinds of things that's almost a narrative that it's hard to kind of, wrap your head around what that means exactly, right? You can't really quantify it, but I do think like her approach and her attitude, you just watch her motor, she just never lets up. And when a team has this much talent and you have a senior who plays like that, that's why they're unstoppable. That's why they come to a place like this and win so easily.
On Gabby, I want to understand more as we go along here. I mean, we kind of almost, at least I'll just say for myself, kind of almost wrote about her high jumping exploits as sort of like, oh, isn't that interesting, And then you say like how athletic she is. Yeah. But there's a difference in the definition of her frame now than it used to be. Yeah. And it looks like she's got more bounce in her game. And it's certainly strength. It's like I can't like quantify everything about it, but there's more strength, and as a result, there's more bounce. So I'm believing more that she's a 6'1" high jumper now than when I first wrote it. You know what I mean? It's like there's something. She's really fast. She's got horizontal speed and vertical lift that is developing her. And I was saying when we were watching the other day, I would take her for a dump. If I was a WNBA team, I would jump all over picking her.
Right. I wonder, she had knee injuries, right? In high school. And I wonder if there is something to, I remember last year her saying that she lost some of her vertical leap, and she does not sure if it, when it would come back. She still was like sort of hopeful, which is kind of interesting. And, And I wonder if there's something to that. I mean, I don't know if medically that's a thing that it takes a couple of years for something like that to come back. But I agree. She's just she's so athletic, and I think she does seem even stronger this year. And the other part of it is I just think her intelligence, her court IQ, kind of that's. You can't overlook that. I think that's something that has developed and kind of evolved over the years here at UConn.
All right, well, guys, I want to circle back to something that we talked about in the preseason, and I don't think the three of us have talked since the Stanford game. So obviously, there's been a few games in between here. Jake, you talked in the past about how there's this need for teams. Where do you put it? Like
2 through 12.
2 through 12, and here we are. UConn's 4-0, all 4 wins against ranked opponents. Obviously, if you're a UConn fan, business as usual, and this has been fun to watch, but should the women's basketball fan outside of UConn be disheartened by this? Because these games have, by and large, they have not been competitive, and you're not seeing that growth from those middle teams, I guess, that in your top 25 so far.
I'm kind of split on that. I think a lot of the country is still feeding off Mississippi State.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, it can happen, and it did.
Yeah.
But what we've seen so far is nothing to dissuade us from thinking that this team is ultra athletic and ultra wanting to what is it? Want to bully people, Paul?
Bully Smurf.
The bully Smurf. That I think
Smurf,
so. The idea that this loss from last year will help this team this year. Sign me up for that one, okay? So like the focus and the drive does not bode well for the rest of the country. I'd be lying to say if I've looked at every team, but I knew UCLA some from last year.
Right.
I saw them, and I know the dynamics of 3 games in 5 nights and the excitement of that game. So it's impossible for me to come off last night's game and go like, oh yeah, can't wait till this team knocks them off in week 3. So from what we've seen this year so far, I would not want to be teams 2 through 12.
Yeah, the other scary thing too is sorry to cut you off, Paul.
Go ahead.
These games, you look at the end score. I think you can make the case that in all 4 games, UConn sort of took their foot off the gas, and it could have been worse. I mean, the lead against UCLA ballooned at one point, and then it comes back down to something that, at the end, it looks on paper like it's sort of respectable. But, I mean, the scary thing for the rest of the country is UConn is not playing as well as they're going to play.
Well, a complete game.
Yeah.
I would say there was nothing but slop in the Maryland game. That was slop.
Yeah.
That finish.
Yeah.
I thought last night, to be honest with you, Chris, I thought UCLA did some good things in the last 5-7 minutes.
Okay, so it was more
against they had their starters in, and I'm talking about UConn.
Yeah.
I thought UCLA did some better things.
Okay.
I think UCLA is a good team, but like Stanford, they still the second half they absolutely took their foot off the pedal there because that was like scary in the first half.
Yeah. I think last night was a reflection of how good UCLA is, and I think that their coach Corey Close was she was coaching right to the end. I think she was trying to make a point to her kids that we're not going to just kind of roll over. And even though it was a 20-point game, she was calling timeouts at the end of the game. So I think that was a case where that was a pretty good team. And look, let's remember that they didn't have Lou Samuelson, and everything we've talked about, right? The travel and the 3 games in 5 days. It was still 18 points, and they are. I mean, Gino said they sort of found an identity, but I think they're still evolving, and they're still they're going to be a different team come spring, and I don't see anyone even close to them, and it's more than just talent. It is just they play with an intensity, and some of these teams, you watch some of these teams, especially like throughout the country in the American Athletic Conference, some of these teams that just aren't very well coached, and it goes beyond just talent. So I don't know.
The third quarter, I guess it was. I'm watching along, Paul. The game is kind of even. You didn't get the feeling that UCLA was going to win or anything, but it was kind of somewhat even. And all, I don't know if it was a 16-2 run, or whatever it ended up as. Boom! It just happened right when I'm watching it, and it happened, to UConn's credit, really quick because of the way they play, and it was almost NBA-like. But in the NBA, the other team generally strikes back with an equally, devastating run. But UCLA never had that answer to that one really devastating run. That's why I felt they regained their ballast some in the fourth quarter. I didn't think UConn necessarily got sloppy or quit. Maybe, at least watching on TV, and I thought UCLA regained their ballast there, but it was devastating what UConn hit them with over a very short period of time. That's really impressive. I don't know how most any team can handle that.
Yeah, and that's kind of a classic thing with his teams, right? I think historically they have these runs where all of a sudden they just, the league goes from 10 to 25 really quickly. And, so, I don't know. Somebody's got to bottle it and try to figure out how to replicate that.
Sure. All right. Well, we're recording this on Wednesday, Thanksgiving Eve, so to speak, and the next game is Saturday against Michigan State as part of the PK 80 tournament. So let's, if you guys want to look ahead a little bit, they've kind of come through what we knew was going to be a test with the travel and all these ranked opponents, but. Obviously, when people hear this, we're gonna give this a little time so people can actually sit and talk with each other at Thanksgiving rather than listen to our podcast. But Paul, if you want to sort of look down the road here at what this next stretch of games kind of represents for them.
Yeah, well, they've got Michigan State up in Eugene.
Yep.
At this Nike event, and then they're going to be in Reno for Gabby Williams' homecoming game at Nevada. So, they'll have that tough stretch is over now. They can kind of have a few days to rest and prepare for the weekend. And I think they feel really good coming out of last night. I think Gino feels really good. I think it's going to be fun to kind of watch now. This next stretch. I think they have a week from Sunday, Notre Dame's in, and that's going to be a big game, and just the magnitude of that, I think the identity thing is real. I do think that to win a game like that last night and to come out of it winning it easily, this team, I think they're starting to sort of believe that maybe they're invincible. And we saw that last year when they had so many flaws and so many, the margin for error was so thin. And this year, without arguably their best all-around player, they come into a place like this and win against the fifth-ranked team in the country. So, it's sort of gelling, and it's going to be fun to kind of watch it the rest of the way here.
Sure. Well, I got to ask this because I like to ask these sort of inside baseball questions. Paul obviously was back in the day was a Red Sox beat reporter, and we know what a grind baseball travel is. But how about for you? You're all over the map, man. What's this stretch been like?
The good thing here is you have some downtime between. Baseball, it's like you're just going every day, and you get into the weeds and you lose track of the days of the week, and you go to a city and you're there for 4 days, but it's like Groundhog Day. You just get up, you go to the park, you write another game story. Now, I was doing it pre-internet, so this is like back in the dark ages where I wasn't, you didn't have to worry about tweeting every minute of the day and writing for the web. This stretch, this is interesting because it's a holiday week, obviously, and you're here, where the team is going up to Oregon tomorrow, and I guess Nike's hosting some Thanksgiving event in Portland because the men's tournament's in Portland. So the team is going to be up there for the rest of the week. I elected to stay down here in sunny Southern California, and I'll head to Oregon on Friday, and then out to Reno on Sunday. So, yeah, it is. This is the worst stretch.
Yeah.
And I knew, coming into the season that this was going to be the one that, once we get past this, then, it'll be more of a kind of a routine schedule similar to last season. But, last night was interesting because the game ended so late, and, you find yourself rewriting the story. And I look back and I keep my watch on Eastern time, and it's like, oh, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just finishing my story now, and posting video and whatnot, and so the readers who wake up in a few hours for work will have my story waiting for them. So it's definitely it's kind of an odd way to go about your work, but as I said, I woke up today and it was sunny out, so
you definitely have that one over us.
There's that, right? There's that.
Editors, I'm not even going to say like just fans, Paul, but editors do not appreciate how hard it is out on the road. And I've done this for 40 years. And there's, I will challenge you on one thing, partner. You haven't had the worst yet. Wait till the winter comes and you're stuck in a half the day or all day overnight in some airplane terminal because of snow. So this is challenging the mileage wise. But you have the worst. It was not over. Yeah. But how difficult it is on these late deadlines. Yeah. People should appreciate writing and watching. I think sometimes the fans forget that you're actually trying to turn a product over while the game is going on. Yeah. That's why I said, nobody is smarter than me watching an NFL game on a 1 o'clock start, eating terrific food at Patriots game. But try me out on a 10 o'clock start like last night had I been out there. Moron city. And so it's real. It is very hard. That's what I'm saying. It's like I watched that game last night, Paul, and I was really calm. I had some thoughts that might have been even more formed than yours because of I wasn't going through what you were going through, but right. You're writing while the game's going on, and thankfully, it was a quick game. We had print deadlines. We were trying to get our story in as many papers as possible, and the game cooperated, and I was able to have a story written for a couple of our editions, and it got in a lot of papers. So thankfully that happened. But you are right about you talk about the travel. The worst thing about this beat is this conference, and I know I'm not saying anything that UConn fans don't agree with, right? But it's the travel, getting to these markets. It's just so difficult to get from Hartford to wherever we're going. Back in the day, people could drive to these road games in the Big East, and now you have to get on a plane and switch planes and just to get to Houston or SMU or Tulsa. So it's it is, and as you said, in the winter, trying to get to these places, it's not great. It's not ideal, that's for sure, to travel that distance and watch UConn win by, 50 points. But I would say the single most frustrating thing about covering UConn sports at this point is, and certainly women's basketball and men's basketball, is that you have to very often change flights at a different airport, and then you get stuck there. So there's nothing worse than like no sleep and then worrying about sweating it out just to think you get to the game or return back home for another game because of the weather. I mean, it's like you can't even work, and you got no sleep, and you can't even get to the place to work because you're stuck at the thing. That is very I don't want anybody to feel sorry for us because it's a great job in doing that. But that's the one time you should feel sorry for us when we can't even get to the place. We're stuck in the layover airport. Before we can even write anything stupid, not getting the chance to write the thing stupid. So that's my little spiel on. Other than that, hey, just a Thanksgiving dinner on the road without your family, that's just a wonderful thing.
Yeah, poor Paul's like one of those guys, like when they show the NFL games and they have the little montage of like the cameramen, like, hi, honey. I have to be at the Cowboys game. Sorry. Yeah. But hey, guys, thank you as always for coming on and talking a little women's hoops. We will do this again soon, hopefully with Paul rejoining us here in Connecticut. And in the meantime, we'll read you both in the ensuing week or so. So thanks again for coming on, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay.